Cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our series review of HBO's The Outsiders.
The Outsider.
Outsider?
Yes.
Outsider. Okay.
Outsiders
I'm not
is
gonna say
something else.
anything. That's true. I'm not going to say anything about this series. It's all on her. I'm just the host. Hi.
That's not fair.
That's true. We've talked about this in the past, that Janice is a super Stephen King fan, has read a bunch of the books. We have almost all of them on hardback at some point in time.
Right.
And knowing that this was a Stephen King series, I was very interested, much like Castle Rock and that kind of, and the adaptations have been much better lately.
Yes.
So, with that being said, how close was this to the book?
So it was reasonably close. I think I kind of pointed out, I tried not to do the actually every 5 minutes. But there were some things, the biggest thing was Holly Gibney's character, Cynthia Erivo.
There you
go. She, don't touch your face. My nose itches. She specifically is not black, which is fine that she was.
Right,
it doesn't matter.
Right.
But I liked her performance. It was just toned down from how Holly Gibney is in the books. She's actually part of a different series, and this was kind of a crossover to bring her over into this series, which is a very Stephen King thing to do. He loves to meld different books together. And she is very OCD, has problems with people just in general, not just big crowds, but people in general. So I feel like they really toned it down for the show, for the series. She never had a boyfriend in the book. She never would. That's just way too much person to person contact for the type of disorders that she has. The guy, I can't remember the character's name, who was the strip club bouncer.
Right. Keep talking.
He was a Hispanic guy in the book, and the reason why that's prevalent is because when he goes to, I think it's Texas that they end up in, he goes to his mom's house, not his brother. And he's there. It's just a thing he does every year. He takes a week's vacation. He goes and spends it with his mom, and he helps take care of her property. And she's the one who starts explaining Cuco and the Mexican kind of history behind this entity. So that's where they get that from. And then I also pointed out that the meeting that they had when Holly first kind of tells them her thoughts on what is actually going on, everybody in the meeting is way more receptive than they are in the show.
Right.
Still not. I mean, there's still a lot of misgivings about what she's trying to tell them.
You're talking about Claude Bolton character.
Sure.
Yes.
Is that his? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was no, the only other thing that I can think of off the top of my head is that whole fair thing that was going on. Where they got the picture of him. He took off the
mask.
Bear mask or whatever. Because he was trying to kidnap that kid. That didn't happen in the book. So, but for the most part, I don't really think that any of that affected the story
overall.
Yeah. They changed some stuff here and there, and it still, to me, flowed along and ended up in the same place.
not knowing the book and just watching the show, and I heard some really good positive
Yeah.
receptions from
Yeah.
this series, and so I was very interested in it again because it's Stephen King and the adaptations. I almost got it right. Have been much better lately.
Right.
People who actually understand what Stephen King is trying to tell in his stories are actually making the stuff. And
Right.
so that's really
Right.
helping a lot. But being an outside observer, pun intended, I really liked this series. I didn't love this series. And I think a lot of it is I don't mind a slow burn, but a slow burn has to keep a certain pace.
Yeah.
And there is the first 2-3 episodes are really awesome. The last 2-3 episodes are really awesome, and there's about maybe 2 or 3 episodes worth of awesomeness in that middle section of 5 where I understand they're trying to just build up the tension and everything that's going on.
Yeah.
It's just that there was times where I faded away and played on my computer
Yeah.
and wasn't really paying
Yeah.
attention and
Yeah.
stuff.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just I
It
really
could have been less.
if it was
episodes.
8 episodes instead
Yeah.
of 10, I
Yeah.
think this is an amazing series.
Yep.
But saying that now, I don't necessarily know what they could cut out because everything actually during that slow build in that middle section, everything is important. There's not anything that's not. There's tons of character development between Ralph and his wife, and who's Ralph is played by Ben Mendelsohn, who's the main cop. Like his process of becoming a believer in the process,
Right.
It has to be the slow burn, and they actually even talk about. He has to come to his own conclusion at his own speed, and one of the ways they explain him doing that is taking small bites of this information, and,
Right.
and even he addresses that he needs to come into it at his own pace. Even that, I think, is handled really well. It's like, come on, all the evidence is there. Like,
Yeah.
just I understand you're a cop and you want practical stuff because you're thinking about how the trial is going to
Yeah.
be later on. I get all of that, but everything is sitting in front of you. Even when you went and arrested the guy Jason Bateman.
Right.
In the first episode, like all the evidence was there where you were questioning it already, and you were making a big deal out, like
Yeah.
doing a show and everything. And
Yeah, and I would say in the book, and I think I might have pointed this out, that he is one of the last ones to come around, but I didn't feel like it was that slow, like he was that obstinate about it. Oh, the other big thing was their son was not dead in the book.
Right.
He's away
Right.
at, like, he apparently goes to boarding school or something, so he
Right.
was away at school. And that was interesting because it really colored how he came at the whole thing.
yeah, which I
And-
didn't mind. I liked that.
Yeah,
I liked
yeah.
that.
It was just an interesting choice,
And
I
it
guess.
gave Ralph's character specifically a driving force of why he went after Jason Bateman so quickly, so early, is because he has this past of losing a child.
Right. And
And-
I think in the book it was more just, did you touch my son? Right.
Right, right.
It was a small town. And that's, again, that, we've said this before. I've said this before in other reviews of Stephen King adaptations, is that a lot of his books are so in the mind of the character.
Right, right.
And that is hard.
It's hard to translate that.
Yeah. So, you got all this mind speak, all this internal dialogue with
Right,
the
right.
character that you have to try to get out there and present, short of having, a narrator or something, which most people don't appreciate.
I think in this particular or this style of show, you could have had the telling of this story of everything that happened from Ralph's point of view, and have him be the narrator as we go along.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not necessarily saying that that's what is needed in
missing.
the show,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think that would have helped the exposition a lot faster.
Yeah, maybe,
And
yeah.
you could have shortened a lot of those. I mean, every episode was an hour long.
Yeah.
And so you're talking about an 8-hour long or 10-hour long movie,
Yeah.
or more,
And
because
I
some
don't,
of them ran
I don't
long.
specifically know how big this book is, because I think I got it on audio, on Audible. So
Right.
I don't know. It was probably 15 hours. I don't know what that translates into.
Right.
Thickness of a book.
Right. I do want to talk about Cynthia and Ben's performances. I really, again, not knowing Cynthia's, not knowing Hallie, what the hell?
Holly?
Not knowing Holly's idiosyncrasies from the book.
Yeah.
I liked how they approached it here, and having her be obnoxiously. We know people that are like this, that can spew facts and
Yeah.
and just know like the most random things, but they have the hardest time, filling out a grocery list,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And it's not that they're dumb; they're just, their brain is wired differently.
Yeah.
And her awkwardness, I think that the awkwardness that she portrays is really well done. It's hard coming from somebody like her, like Cynthia.
Yeah.
That I think she did great job in the role.
Yeah.
I think coming from her, it's a really it's a visual thing with her. Like,
Maybe.
I physically, like, and I'm not saying that, because she's black or what, it just, you see her in Harriet, or you
Yeah.
see her in Widows, or you see her on Broadway in this very gregarious, strong
Yeah.
person,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you get her in a role like this where she's still strong, but she's in single-minded, but she's very subdued physically, and she does a great job with it. It was a moment of transition to go through that, and
Yeah.
I actually really appreciated what she did. But for me, the standout in the show is Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah,
And we were
was
talking about this.
amazing.
We've been, because of the lockdown that most of the world is on right now, we've been watching a lot of Everything Great videos from Cinema Wins.
Yeah.
Because I love that channel on YouTube. Go subscribe to his channel if you haven't. He does mostly movies. He has a criteria for always a win actors, and that's when an actor gets lost in a role, and you go back and you realize that particular actor is always amazing and gets lost in a role. And this is a guy that we got to know through Sorrento from Ready Player One, and from Orson Krennic from Ready Player One, or from Rogue One, from one and one.
So many ones.
And so to see him in a non-genre, non-bad guy role, have heart, have an amazingly intimate relationship with his wife when they've had such a tragedy in their lives, fell apart, came back together. His skepticism, but you still like following I just appreciated like his performance even more.
Yeah.
After watching him in all these different things.
Yeah.
I just,
He's almost always a bad guy, but we just saw him in something. I'm sitting here trying to think of what it was, where it was a long. I mean,
he's one of the board members of Wayne Enterprises in Batman Rises.
Yeah,
He's the one that fights the votes to get Bruce kicked out.
Right.
From Cinema Wins. So it's always like that. You're like, wait, I forget how good of an actor he is.
Yeah.
And he's an amazing guy, which means he's always a great bad guy. Like, always the super nice guys get to play that awesome bad guy.
Yep.
But here he's not the bad guy. And for me, him and Cynthia really carried the show overall, the cast of characters that are or the cast of actors around them are not a ton of household names. The only really one is Patty Consinda, who was in The World's End. What did we watch last night? The World's End and a bunch of different things. He's a big time British actor.
Oh, yeah.
But we don't see him a lot here in the States, and so having him play this bouncer manager of a strip club kind of guy in Oklahoma, I guess it is, or Ohio, which is funny because he's very British and then he's got
Right.
no British accent or anything.
Right.
But I just thought the cast was done really well. It's shot really cool.
Yeah.
And I just think overall, like we were saying, I think if it's an 8-episode season and not a 10-episode season, it's off the walls amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would have been better. I think this is an interesting choice for, for a series or a mini series or whatever you want to call
Right.
it for HBO to pick up. I mean, it's a newer book. The lady sitting next to me on the flight from St. Lucia to Minneapolis was reading it on her on her tablet because I kept like, where is she at now? Oh yeah, okay. Where's she at now? Okay. There's another one, I'm trying to think of the name of it, that just came out too, that I would think would be a better choice for an adaptation. Recent, but whatever.
There's a scene at the end. It's not really spoilery, but Ralph asks Holly, "Is there more things out there?"
Yeah.
And she just kind of, grins,
Right.
and walks out the door, and it really kind of leaves it open to have further supernaturally based stories within this universe going forward.
Which is interesting with her because the 3 that she's in, the Frank something Chronicles, I can't think of the last name. Those are more gumshoe detective. Like the Frank is a retired cop and he's bored, and there's this serial killer in their town, and he hooks up with her and this kid down the street, and then they do that 2 more times, right? So her talents in those books have nothing to do with the supernatural. They have to do with detective work, and she actually, that's how she ends up with them, is because Frank dies and she carries on with this detective agency. So they hired her as a detective, which I think she mentions a couple of times in the show. But it's just funny that, I mean, if they do decide to continue on with that's a complete like divergence from where she came from.
It would be very interesting to have someone like. Actually, it would be really cool if they would do it this way. Maybe they can. Have Holly show up in the next season of Castle Rock.
Yeah. And
have that kind of gumshoe detective connected to the outsider, connected to the previous, because each of there's supposed to be an anthology series with Castle Rock, but they're all connected to each other because of Derry and all the other Stephen King-ish.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read anything on it, so I don't know if Hulu is trying to keep Castle Rock in the Castle Rock Derry Bangor, Maine kind of, because that's a separate section of Stephen King stuff. And basically ever since he got older, his kids all moved out. Him and his wife go to Florida. They're snowbirds. You get hit by a van and now things hurt, right? So you need to not.
I didn't get hit by a van and everything hurts.
You need to not be in Maine in the wintertime. And so they go to Florida. And as soon as that happened, he wrote a book called Doom McKees about Florida. And ever since, everything he does is he's ventured out. There's a whole nother world out there besides Bangor, Maine.
Imagine that.
So I don't know if they're trying to, because so far it seems like everything has been kind of the Derry, Castle Rock, Maine stuff. I want to see them do Needful Things. I want to see them put Needful Things in there somewhere.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if they just, knowing that the Stand is coming too, and having this connective stuff. But you could do your outsider, supernatural, real world storytelling process and have Holly be the only one that's really the reoccurring character.
Yeah,
going on throughout. It would be really interesting to do, but they set it up to do that without really saying, "Hey, we're doing a second season."
Yeah,
they just kind of set it up.
I think it'd be cool if they kind of do like they do with Castle Rock. She could be a connective tissue, but not have the same person play her every single time.
Yeah,
have a new person play her.
They kind of do that with.
That'd be fun.
I was gonna say they kind of do that with Fargo a little bit, but it's
True Detective.
True Detective, yeah, is that way. So overall, I think we really like the series. I think we both wanted maybe a little bit more, or maybe a little bit less, depending on how you look at it. But it's totally worth the watch. It's on HBO now, or on regular HBO and stuff like that. So let us know what you thought of The Outsider, our review of it, all that kind of stuff. Just be nice. Remember, we're all stuck in this thing together, so be nice while you're online. I know I'm asking an awful lot. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you're on the podcast feed, please follow us there, and follow us on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitters. We're posting as much as we can with nothing going on. So if we don't see you, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.